Good morning and welcome to the Brenda Perryman Show right here on TV 33 WHPR, Comcast 90 in Detroit and Oakland County and all over the world, and courtesy of the World Wide Web, www.tv33WHPR. And I have a very exciting show. I have distinguished all over the place. First, I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Alma Stallworth and then Judge Terrence Keith. So I have a lot of great things happening this morning. So I want to get right into it and talk to Dr. Alma Stallworth. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm just wonderful. I'm really honored with you being here.
I am so grateful for you giving me this time.
Oh, well, you have a legacy. And speaking of legacy, your book says The Stallworth Legacy. And we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But we're going to first talk about you because Dr. Stallworth was a state representative for 22 years, correct?
Yes. And at that time, we didn't have term limits. So therefore, you could do a better job because you had longer time to do research and to work with your constituents and have educational programs and workshops and things like that. So I really enjoyed my time there. I served as chair of public utilities for 18 years, so I was part of the reorganization of the phone systems for deregulation and also electric and gas. And that was quite a task because I'm not a lawyer, but I did have to work hard to understand the current law and then work for the changes that were necessary. And of course, we felt that was quite an accomplishment. But when we went out in the community, people said, well, you know, I used to have one phone bill, now I got four. So,
oh, my goodness.
But we still have the technology to deal with and advancement, and then also sharing the resources. And so I learned a lot in that time.
Well, could we first talk a little, too, about your history? Now, where were you born? Were you born here? Or?
I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas, but I should say I actually grew up in the city of Detroit. I went to Garfield Elementary School and graduated from Northeastern High School.
Wow, East Sider.
East Sider all the way, and a member of Bethel AME Church all my life because of my mom. We came to Detroit. We joined there as a family. So that's part of why I have been successful in being involved in public service, because in my church I had lots of exposure in terms of speaking and working with groups and being a leader in our youth programs. And so this all, gave me the base I needed to consider running for public office.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask you. Why did you run, or when did you know that you wanted to do that?
Well, we moved in Northwest Detroit when my children were in elementary school. And of course, those of you that are familiar with the city, you know that at that time it was primarily the Jewish community.
Right.
And the schools were the same, and of course we felt everything was going to be perfect because at that time all of the students were high achievers and that kind of thing. But then I became very active in the parent-teacher organization, and because of the shift in population, a lot of the people moved, and there was a change in terms of the basis support for the schools because our parents worked. They couldn't volunteer. They didn't have the resources to give money. And so we had a lot of challenges at that time. And I was instrumental in seeing that Bobian Middle School was built because we felt our students were not ready to go right into high school. So in all of that, we also rezoned the area because as people moved, businesses moved, we got a lot of things that were not conducive to neighborhoods. So because of that leadership, people urged me to run for public office. And of course, I'd never thought of it. I wasn't even a member of the Democratic Party at that time. And with the support and encouragement, I ran against 5 men and won.
You ran against 5 men. That was the deal. You see, their stuff evened out, and you got the majority.
Right.
That is wonderful.
Right.
So then, so it was a new learning curve, wasn't it?
Right, right. And
What did you learn when you first got there? Because you have to kind of get used to things, right?
well, it was quite experience because I'd never been away from home on my own. I went to Wayne State University and Highland Park Community College. So I was home with my parents and my sisters all that time. And to go all of a sudden away and be on my own, I have to decide where I'm going to live, what I'm going to do. And it was quite a challenge for me. And then, of course, when you go, when you're first elected, there's a lot of things to learn about the office, and you got to get staff and all of that. So it was quite a learning process, but I managed it. I was surprised.
Oh, you never know what you can do until you're challenged to do it.
Right.
And you have to do it. And so Dr. Rose and I were talking the other day on Facebook. We said you just do it.
That's right.
As a woman, because we juggle a lot of hats.
Right.
A lot
And
of
because of that, you're able.
You're able.
Yes.
Right. So you have this book out, and I'm so excited about the book because there is a Stallworth legacy because both of your sons, Thomas and Keith, both were legislators too.
Right.
And they learned that from you, I guess.
Yes, they did, and share in my interests. Tommy, it was, currently in the legislature. I was very pleased with that, and I also worked for United Negro College Fund. Both of them were involved and helped me with that. And it's very hard to get your children to buy into whatever you're doing because they have their own ideas, especially these days. But I was fortunate in that my children were able to understand and really have a passion for some of the work that they saw me involved with. So I'm thankful for that. We organized the Black Caucus Foundation of Michigan, and I have to take my hat off to my younger son, Keith Stallworth, because he was instrumental in me being elected chair of the Legislative Black Caucus.
Oh, wow.
And while I was chair of the caucus, I founded the foundation. So we are over 35 years as a nonprofit community service organization.
What does the caucus do?
We do programs in the schools. Our focus is prevention, alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. We also work with students on academic achievement, and also there are options in terms of leisure time. The other role we play is in public policy, and we're involved with legislators that are currently serving so that they understand some of the responsibilities, and there are bills that they need help with. And again, Dr. K.B. Stallworth, my younger son, he is very involved with that process, and so we have been very fortunate in terms of being able to continue our programs and have the necessary funding. And we're since the school districts organized into academies now. We're in all the high schools. Our original goal was the middle schools because we felt like we could influence
middle schools are so important. Mm-hmm. They are so important because that's what they are, middle. Mm-hmm. And students are already looking at what they want to do as far as how they want to act,
right.
Good, bad, or indifferent,
right.
And so forth. That is such a pivotal time. I wish you could have gotten into the middle school.
Well, we started out there, but mm-hmm. They have quietly limited the numbers now. So that's why we're kind of in the high schools now.
Well, we have a call. We have Mr. Amos on the line. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ms. Perryman, and to your guest.
Dr. Stallworth.
My question for your guest is, what is their position on community benefit agreement and why?
Community service, what did you say? Community
benefit agreements.
Community benefit agreement.
You want to give me a little more information on that?
Okay, community benefit agreement, commonly known as the CBA, is a concept where a developer and the host community, which is the people, the citizens of a neighborhood where the development is going to be constructed, have a binding contract that if the developer is receiving federal dollars or taxpayer dollars, whether it be in the form of cash or tax abatements, the community must benefit in terms of jobs, job training, rec centers, school construction, things of that nature. And it's been around for about 23 to 25 years all over the country. And it's embraced by Canada, the United Kingdom, and
Well, I think that what you're talking about is quite a process in terms of the legislature, the city council, and the mayor. And I think that in order for that to be effective in terms of all of the things you've listed, you must have people who are involved and are going to work for it. They have to talk with policymakers about their preferences and be there to help decide it once a developer has a plan. And a lot of that's going on right now because the mayor is trying to reestablish those neighborhoods that have been damaged because of vacant houses and limited, businesses on the strips. And so it's very important. You've got to understand that none of this happens without community, and the community must be involved. You've got to get people organized. You've got to have leaders. You've got to have spokespersons. And this is what happened when we rezoned Detroit, in northwest Detroit. We rezoned Wyoming to Greenfield, 6 Mile to 8 Mile, because we were concerned about the changes and not having input into terms of what was going to come in and replace the people that had left. And so there's now an ordinance where the city is supposed to notify people if it's in their area. So this does work, but it does take people.
Oh yeah, and I like to suggest that when you at your leisure, just Google community benefit agreement, and you'll also see where it stresses the point that, hey, the politicians, the elected officials, they need to bring the citizens in to the negotiating table with the developer on the front end, not the back end. And that's why that's where we have the strength to work for the people.
Well, I agree with all you've said, and I think that what we have to understand, it requires networking,
Absolutely.
communication, and also education. Because a lot of people, even though you're talking about it and they agree with you, they don't understand what they have to do about it.
Okay, thank you for your response.
Thank you. Thank you for your call.
Okay.
Dr. Stallworth, your book, The Stallworth Legacy, Memoirs by the Honorable Alma Stallworth, Ph.D. Tell me why you talked about legacy.
Well, I think it's very important that we all understand that in order for our young people to have a historical, cultural, and civic reference, they must know more about the people who are considered leaders. We talk about it primarily now, elected officials, but you have other people in the community that are contributing, giving time,
Yes.
and providing the leadership that's necessary. So we need to have a record of that. My book really deals with my experience as a community person running to Lansing, and also the kind of contributions I was able to make based on my access and my understanding, and then connecting it up with what I thought the needs of the community were. And of course, young people have always been my priority. So I think that in the book I talk about the things that we were able to accomplish. I also traveled a great deal with women in government, and we tried to review what other countries are doing in terms of women and their success in getting elected, what their roles and responsibilities were, whether elected or appointed, what that process was all about. So that really enriched my understanding. And then I went to Japan and Korea to look at their educational system. And of course, education has always been quite a challenge for us, not just in Detroit, but nationally, in terms of getting our children where they ought to be. So this gave us some insight, and I went over there with the House Education Committee, Senate and House, and we spent a week going from different places. Shiga, Japan was a sister city for Lansing, and we had intern students from Michigan State University that were over there to study the culture, learn the language, and to work on a boat they call the Michigan. So being able to see that and to talk with the people who were in charge was a great enrichment. So this is why when I came back, we started an intern program in Lansing, because one of the things is young people don't really get involved in political affairs enough, and they don't know about the jobs.
Right.
And so in starting the intern program, we were able to put staff in our offices that were reflective of our district. And I omitted to say, when I went to Lansing, the only staff I had choice of was the people that were in the pool, and they were basically white women. And that's what my first staff was. So I feel that these are things that people need to know and understand, and also have a greater appreciation for some of the people who are really trying to make a difference in our community.
Well, you said a word, understand. Understanding your people, understanding the district, really having that feel for what the people need. And that's so important. And sometimes we get politicians who just want to run for office and don't necessarily understand the people they're trying to run for.
Well, I think the difference now is we don't have the structure we used to have, where people were coming out of the unions. Unions used to train people to run for public office. And also when they came to Lansing, and I'm talking about that because that's where I was, they had issues. And now people are elected, they don't have any issues. They don't have any ideas. And they know they're only going to serve 6 years, so they're not concerned about really having a measurable outcome.
That's a travesty.
And
we have a call on the line. Okay, we have Barbara. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I am so pleased with Miss Stallworth. The only thing that I can say, though, her son Thomas is just the opposite in the way he wants to buy us to have 2 more hours of drinking. We don't need that, but I don't blame you for that.
Well, thank you. Well, I don't know if he provided the leadership on that. He may have voted for it, I don't know. But I agree with you.
The 2 more hours of drinking. Yeah, that is an issue that people have been talking about.
Thank you.
Okay, Barbara, thank you. Well, no 2 days are alike.
That's true.
No 2 days are alike. So, I want to ask you this question. I've been thinking about it all night. What was your highest point of satisfaction when I'm sure you had many, but when you were in the legislature?
Well, I offered a number of bills, and I always served on health policy, but I think the greatest contribution I had is when I influenced Republican women to support payment to midwives for providing deliveries of babies. I was on the subcommittee on infant mortality, and because of that, I traveled around the state to see what kinds of services we were providing for pregnant women. And I found out in these smaller towns, the doctors were not willing to take additional patients. They had their own group they were working with, and a lot of these women had to travel a distance even to have their child delivered, their baby delivered. I think Kalamazoo, they had to go to Ann Arbor.
Really?
And so in doing that, it gave me a greater understanding of there were a lot of midwives in those communities that were providing the prenatal care, but then when the time for the baby to come, they could not get the insurance to pay for the service. We pay on the doctors, but we couldn't pay the women. So I was able to get them to vote for that, and in voting for that, that changed the law and brought midwives into the same system that our doctors are.
And that's a major part of your legacy too. That was laudable. Isn't it something how men and women, get
Right.
I don't know. I think about healthcare, and I think about, I'm going to name this Viagra. Men get that, they can use that on their healthcare, but certain things women cannot.
Right, that's true. And it's a learning process. I mean, when I was in the legislature, our big concern was generics. And now everything is generic. It's hard to know when you're getting a true drug unless you go to a health store or something like that. But the system has changed. Everybody's trying to save money. And so what we find, we have a whole bag of generic drugs.
And the bigger costs go to the consumer, to
Right,
the patient.
right.
Because some of these, with the deductibles that they have too with these insurance companies, you have to pay a certain amount.
Right, right.
And it's a bigger amount sometimes than some people can afford before they really kick in.
Right, right.
That's very unfortunate. Very, very.
Well, they have to continue to work on it. And
Well, I hope they do.
I don't agree with the Republicans in terms of trying to, pull back the health care plan that the president has provided leadership for. But there is a need really to work on some improvements.
Right.
And so what we're talking about, I know when my mom was going through her congestive heart challenge, she did have Medicaid, and they did have prescription drugs they could get for $1, but she would not apply. I had to apply for her because, a lot of seniors, they haven't been on welfare, so they don't want to go through that process.
Yeah.
But that was only to give them, verify income, and then once you did that, the prescriptions are only $1. Well, I guess they've gotten rid of that altogether now, and it does not cover glasses or teeth.
Well, you're getting ready to have a book signing, right?
Yes.
When is that?
That's Saturday, January 24th, at the St. Regis Hotel, from 8:30 to noon. And
8:30 in the morning to noon at the St. Regis Hotel over on the boulevard near Woodward.
And I have attorney Reginald Turner as our guest speaker. As you know, he's a very outstanding lawyer in the city, but he's also a civic and charitable volunteer. He gives so much time. I went on the internet and looked up his bios and articles, and I was amazed. I said, I'm really blessed that he agreed without persuasion to come and be our speaker.
Wow, that's fabulous. Well, this is going to be a wonderful event because Dr. Stallworth has, of course, great stories that she talks about in her book. And then we have Reginald Turner. And it's like breakfast with you, right?
Right.
Oh, food. Food. I always say that's the way I got my kids to do things. So tell them they have food.
Right.
So this is going to be wonderful, and that date is the 24th.
January 24th, a Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Stallworth, I really appreciate you, and I know my viewers do. And this photo, you say it's a painting, on the front of this book is just worth framing.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
It is so beautiful, and thank you for the book.
Well, thank you,
really
and God bless you.
You too.
And I enjoyed being on your show, and I hope the information I shared was interesting and helpful.
It was helpful. It was helpful. We'll be back in just a moment. So stick and stay and don't go away. We have Mr. Terrence Keith.